Hey everyone, Joe DiChiara here, joined by Connor Hartnett. We're going to go into Connor's swing we just captured in 3D. I'm going to go through a couple of his graphs, talk to you a little bit about what I see, and then we're going to give Connor a biofeedback activity to help him in whatever area we decide that we want to work on that he should improve. So we're going to go into our client manager here and pull up his performance graphs. And the first graph that we get to is his kinematic sequence. Now, Connor's a good player, so we're seeing a lot of really good things here. One of the things Connor's working on right now, just like just about everyone in the golf industry, is speed, right? He's trying to hit the golf ball further. So when we look at speeds of the club, we're going to always want to look at the speeds of the body to see how fast they're moving and if there's the right amount of energy being transferred from one segment to the other. So if I look at Connor's speeds, he does a pretty good job with every segment except for the pelvis is a little bit low relative to the PGA Tour ranges. So I'm going to try and now go a little bit deeper into your graphs and figure out why the speeds of your pelvis are so low compared to the other segments. So one of the things we want to pay attention to when we talk about pelvis speed is how a player can tilt. So anterior or posterior tilting of the pelvis and being able to keep the pelvis relatively neutral in a strong position is something that's really important to creating speeds. So the first graph I'm going to go into is Connor's pelvis bend graph. And I'm already seeing an area where we can make some improvement. So Connor's starting out at about 16 degrees, and then your pelvis bend is staying relatively the same the entire time. So you really don't have a lot of what we call core engagement, right? So the bend should start a little bit higher, and then we should lose some of that bend down to about 16 degrees. But because of the fact that we've engaged our core, and that pulls the pelvis underneath just a little bit. Gotcha. Okay. All right? And then we see a little spike, which we see in a lot of players that are trying to go from the backswing into the downswing and push. Now, the one thing I notice is your little spike, your little peak there, comes a little bit late. So that could be attributed to how you're pressuring the ground. And because your pelvis is tucked underneath a little bit more, what will happen as a result is a lot of your pressure will go back towards your heels, and you'll be a little late when you try and pressure the ground. That'll also play a big part in how much speed you can create with the pelvis. Okay. All right? And then also when we, after that peak, when we start to see the rapid decline, we see it start, but then it kind of flatlines and then goes down a little bit more after impact. Mm-hmm. So again, we're just seeing a lot of inefficiencies in how you're able to tuck and posterior tilt, losing bend, because you're starting out pretty much on the low end of where we look to see. So there's really not that much space for you to go even more, right? So we're going to work on a couple things here. We're going to pull up a biofeedback activity. All right, so the one that I'm going to have you work on is what we call pelvis bend, but we're going to do it at address and then at the top as well. So if we go to pelvis bend at address, I would like to see you more around 20 degrees rather than 16. So I'm going to change this from 19 to 20.
That's bend, right?
That's bend, pelvis bend, yep. And then our tolerance, I'm going to take down really tight on you to plus or minus 3. Okay. All right, and then I'm actually going to bring your target up just a couple degrees higher so that you don't get anywhere near that 16 number. Okay, so you got to be at least 19 to start. Okay. And then your cue when we work on core engagement is you're going to try and lose that tone in the backswing. Okay. That makes sense. So let's close that. We'll launch, train without reps so that we can do it as many times as we want. Mm-hmm. Okay, so if I pull up your metrics here, pretty neutral. Okay, good. So before we even talk about pelvis bend, we're going to talk about pressure in your feet, okay? So you're going to stand up nice and tall. I'd like you to go ahead and hold the club out in front of you like this, okay? And then we're going to just rock from our heels to our toes, and then we're going to find the middle of the foot, like the balls of your feet or just behind the balls of your feet, okay? From there, we're going to soften the knees a little bit, and then you're going to hinge forward from the hips and let the club fall, okay? So right now, we're going to allow your arms to work out just a little bit more, and then you can get a little bit more hinge. Okay, so there we're at about 21. That's kind of where we want to feel that pelvis bend.
Yeah, definitely feel like a butt is out a little bit.
A little bit more, yeah. Right. So as an awareness drill from here, go ahead and face like you're going to hit a golf ball into the screen and do the same thing again. Excellent. There's 22. So just as an awareness drill, go ahead and stay with your upper body where it is, and then try and arch your lower back as much as you can. Okay, up to 28, and now tuck it underneath as much as you can. Okay, all the way down to 2. So you do have the posterior tilting capability, right? It's a little bit on the weak side. You felt that kind of shaking when you did that. Yeah. So that's a neuromuscular thing where you're just not used to doing that. So the more you get accustomed to that, that shaking will actually go away, right? Yeah. So I want you to go ahead and set up again and give me a couple more of those pelvic tilts in athletic posture, as high as you can go, as low as you can go, back and forth. You should start to feel it smooth out a little bit the more you do it. Good. So you've got good range. A little bit limit on the higher side, but we don't need to go any higher than that, so that's perfectly fine. So now what I'd like you to do is go ahead and set up over the golf ball, get the tone. Great. And now I want you to go halfway back, lead arm parallel to the ground, and engage the core, which will tuck it underneath. And there's that 15-14 number. Okay, so that's the feeling that I want you to have when you're making your backswing. And then as you come into the golf ball, you can feel like you're going to tuck as hard as you want coming into impact. Okay. All right? So let's do that a few more times, and then I'm going to have you hit a couple shots. Okay, good. You overdid it there. That's 9, so just a little bit less than that, but that's good for the awareness. Great. There's 15. Excellent. And then tuck. Perfect. Excellent. Do that a few more times for me. Good. One more, and then we'll hit a couple shots. Good. Okay, let's go ahead and hit 1 or 2. Just make sure you have the tone. On the way back, you lose it. Good work. How'd that feel?
Yeah, good. Definitely feel it in my, my abdominals, like engaging there.
Sure. And you can go little by little adding speed, right? And the speed that I want you to really focus on is speed here with the pelvis. As you're tucking, a lot of rotational velocity. You can start to really kind of go a little bit more each time as you feel comfortable. Good. One more, and then we'll recapture. Great. So let's go ahead back into our measure mode. All right, let's go ahead and hit a full shot. Okay. Okay, so start where you were feeling more around 21. Really good there.
Swing.
Yep. Good work. So 376 was our last one. 458. Okay, so right off the bat, big jump there. Almost 100 degrees per.
Definitely feeling that more of a tuck in the downswing.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and take a look at that graph. So yeah, we've got 458. Each other segment was right around the same, but much higher with the pelvis, which I like. And then you could see our pelvis bend shape is much better. Starting out at 22, losing bend in the backswing, down to about 14 or 13. Not surprised that when you're doing it for the first time, you're over-exaggerating it. That's perfectly fine. As you get better at this, I would say we would want to have that decrease to be maybe 3 to 4, maybe 5 degrees,
less, yeah.
right? A little less. And then we would start to work on the timing of your pressure shift to get that jump to start occur a little bit earlier.
Oh,
Yep.
gotcha.
So
More
when
towards the
you're
top.
changing the pressure from trail to lead is when we usually will see the pelvis go back into anterior a little bit. And if we can get that a little bit earlier, we can then start to go much more posterior before we get to impact,
Got it.
which will add even more speed.
Okay, that makes sense.
So for everybody at home, pay attention to pelvis bend and let your players work on this core engagement and controlling pelvis mobility in that anterior posterior bend movement to help improve the speeds, the rotational velocities of their pelvis segment, which will help their overall speed of each segment, and then hopefully they get that out into the golf club.